Aloha and welcome to Inside Hawaii Real Estate. I'm Will Tanaka with my co-host, business partner, and wife, Leonie Lam.
Thanks, Will. Together as full-time realtors, we're bringing you the latest in Hawaii real estate.
And today we're so honored to have our very special guest, Victor Rasgado, in the house. So very excited to talk story with him. He is the president of Hawaii Land Surveyors Association. He's also the senior surveyor of ThinkTech Consulting Services.
He is the geospatial and land survey manager for the ThinkTech office, which is located in Honolulu as well as Hilo, Hawaii. And he's the lead for ThinkTech's US West Unmanned Aerial Systems UAS deployment. So welcome, Victor.
Thank you for having me. And it's an honor to be with the two of you. You do such a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. And, we're turning to the expert to learn more about what a survey is. We also want to know, why is it so important? And specifically, why is it so important in Hawaii real estate? Victor, please share with us.
I'll keep it simple. Surveying is the art of measuring features, whether it's man-made or natural, on the surface of the earth. We take that information, we create maps, and then whether it's for real estate or for engineering, we provide that information in a way that an engineer or real estate agent can look at and understand what their client is needing, whether it's, hey, I got a K1, K2, I need to know if I have encroachments, or an engineer looking to design a new house.
From your perspective, oftentimes, as part of the purchase contract, you mentioned the K1, K2, those are provisions in a standard, real estate contract in Hawaii. Most of the time it's just paid for by the seller. Everything's negotiable. But,
Right.
With that said, in terms of, you mentioned encroachments, you mentioned, measuring the land and the boundaries. And for any homeowner or prospective homeowners who are looking to purchase a single family home, why is it so important?
I think it's important because it's a guarantee. If you have a survey done and it's stamped by a licensed surveyor who is licensed to practice in Hawaii, it's a guarantee. If anything is proven wrong later, you can go to that surveyor and say, hey, something's going on, help me out. Versus a non-licensed surveyor doing a boundary survey where you don't have a guarantee. And we've seen lots of issues where somebody's staked the wrong house or didn't survey the right property or lot, and then a house was built in the wrong area.
Just to kind of follow up on that, so it's important to have a licensed surveyor, but is there any way to verify credentials for surveyors? Or do you have any advice for like a homeowner or a realtor even who's looking for a surveyor right now? How can they validate the credentials of a surveyor?
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, when you have a contract with a surveyor, they should be providing their license information on their quote or the contract that they produce for your client. Second, any deliverable, whether it's a map or report, should be signed and stamped by a licensed surveyor. That's your guarantee. That's proof that this was done by a licensed surveyor here in Hawaii. So look for that stamp.
Yeah.
If they're not going to stamp their map, red flag.
That is good to know. Yeah. In terms of, I like the word when you say guarantees, because as a consumer, all of us are consumers. When they say guarantee, it's like, ooh, that's a nice word, right? Especially when it comes to real estate. You're talking about hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. So anytime you use the word guarantee by a licensed surveyor, that rings a nice bell.
Yeah, and that's why I don't have any hair anymore, because those guarantees, you want to make sure your work is correct. And so every project, all the care that goes from the start to the finish of that project, you're always looking for issues that may come up, whether they're encroachments or, something unexpected in the title comes up. Those are
Mm.
things that a licensed surveyor is looking for versus someone who's just like, I got a metal detector. I'm going to go look for a pin.
Okay, that's a little bit scary. When like an unlicensed person trying to look for pins, that does not sound good. And we'll definitely get more into that. But
Sure.
Leonie mentioned, yeah, about this unmanned aerial systems, and I'm sure that there's been quite an evolution of surveying over time. Because I think I just Googled it, and back in the 1700s or 1800s, they used like chain links, and
Mhm.
I think we've come a long way. So maybe over the past decade or so, how has surveying technology evolved? And what are you guys doing today?
I personally think that in the last 10 years, um, the technology that is now being part of the geospatial land survey GIS professions have kind of forced everyone to work together and
Mm.
to do whatever it is their profession does, and then the drones have definitely provided more information um, that depending on the the part or the piece you're in this whole
Mm.
geospatial world, um, you really got to know what you're looking at and what you're looking for. So drones have definitely changed the game. It's kind of like the Wild West a little bit, where you got people that know what they're doing, and then you got people who are new to it and they think they're surveying, or the, so the word surveyor, um, that can be used in a lot of different um, places within the workflow. Yeah, like you have
Mm.
surveyors who are in the field, and those are surveyors, and you have surveyors who are in the office, who do their maps, and they're surveyors, and of course you got the management, and they're surveyors. Each part, you got to have a special skill set for that part, right? And that's what I really like about this profession is. Um, you can come in without any experience if you can find someone to teach you to
Mm.
learn surveying, or you can go to school, learn all this new technology that's going on, and then go get your license, right? Or, and then you take all that experience and all that education, you get a license eventually, and then you go, work for a big corporation like I do, or start your own business. So I really like this profession, and I like where it's going because the sky's the limit with drones. There's so much more now at the front end that leads to a final deliverable, whether it's a map, whatever. So we really, really need more people within this profession to get going because there's so much more now to learn and to do, which I like because it keeps my job interesting, right? Like I've been doing this for over 30 years, and it's like every year I have to learn something new. So that's exciting, and then it also gets a little tiring. And again, not here.
I feel like land surveying as a profession is probably a lesser known or, but it sounds like
Yeah.
a really fascinating field of study with a lot of technological advances, flying drones and, but like you said, you could be in the office. I feel like what you do in your profession, your kind of forte is more doing large scale for land developments, surveys for land developments and things like that, or large lots. And then, like we had talked about, there are also, smaller, like people, small surveyors that focus on smaller land, or residential homes.
A lot of niches, a lot of niches. I mean, and I would even throw it back to ancient times, right, where the ancients were mapping and wayfinding by stars and the sun and currents, and
Mm.
and we're talking to all civilizations, whether it's the Mayan or the Aztecs or the Polynesian. They all had their ways of mapping and then exploring, right? So I kind of like the idea that we're still exploring because I've been able to go to places. So if you like going to different places and seeing different areas, this is a great profession because you get to go outside and do that. My big wish someday is to go do some of the mapping and the scanning, like in the old Mayan ruins, right? So there's a little bit of Indiana Jones in there too.
I love your passion, Victor. Like this is pretty exciting. So anyone who might be watching this and they might be interested in real estate, and oftentimes becoming a surveyor, that doesn't pop up in people's head, right? Just because it's such an unknown. Unless you're in a real estate transaction and you're purchasing, it's like, hey, you need a survey. What's that? You know, just to make sure everything's within de minimis, there's no encroachments, and then people just kind of move on. But this sounds like a very fascinating industry.
Well, I wanted to make a plug since it's on my mind for the Hawaii Community College and the program that they just put in place here in Hilo. It's called Engineering and Technologies, but there's a lot of new course study that they plugged into that school, which include drone piloting, remote sensing, mapping with remote sensing. You have land surveyor skill sets in there, as well as GIS, the geographical information systems, and mapping with that software. So a really good program to get into. It's not necessarily a 2-year degree. There's several different certificates that will get you in, and within a year you have your skill sets, and then you go get a job, and then hopefully you're out there, and I'll see you in the Amazon mapping the Mayan temples.
Would they get to do they learn how to use all the technologies, including drones, flying drones?
Yes, they fly drones.
That's exciting.
Yeah, they take the information and they bring it back to their labs, and they map it. They use survey GPS to get positions, and then create the point clouds and the maps that whatever the assignment the teacher puts out. So yeah, this is their second run. It's going on right now, but definitely check it out. Donna DeLuce is the faculty administrator there, and I'm sure she'll be happy to share with you the curriculum and what it would take to get into this profession. It is a great profession. I got lucky. I fell into it. Nobody told me anything about surveying. All I knew was I really liked geographical informations and mapping. And just through life and whatnot, I ended up in Alaska, and that program there, surveying and mapping course, had GIS, so I fell right into it, and I've been blessed. So, yay for luck.
So let's talk about property. Okay, so
yes,
when surveying a property, so we talked a little bit about encroachments. So what do you think property owners should be aware of regarding encroachments or structures crossing property lines?
First and foremost, even the surveyor, when they go out to your property, they have to do their work in order to figure out where your boundary is. Yeah. And then once they figure that out, then with their measurements, they can start measuring and indicating to you, the surveyor, the client, the real estate agent, what measurements they're seeing and whether or not, say, a structure is over the line. We really don't get into encroachments. In fact, I think we like the word projects or into the property, because encroachment is a legal term, and really it's up to the lawyers, right, to determine whether or not it's an encroachment, right? Because maybe there was an agreement, maybe there's an easement. We do the best we can to map all the information that we get from the client and from our research, but still, it's not in our privy to say this is an encroachment. It's more, here's our measurements. This structure looks like it's 2 feet over the line. So it protrudes right from your property into the other properties, or vice versa. So just to make that clear, right? But more important, only a licensed surveyor can determine where your property is. So they're the ones, again, going back to that guarantee, that can say without a doubt, this is where your line is. Now that doesn't mean to say that another surveyor, licensed surveyor, will come and decide, well, I kind of like my solution better. But the point is that licensed surveyor is the only one that can map boundary, can create boundary, can write legal descriptions for boundaries. So it's really important that that surveyor is the one that's giving you the information. So then you, as a client or real estate agent, can then take it to the next step, which hopefully not, is seeing a lawyer. Or maybe there's an agreement the two owners can come to.
That's an interesting point regarding encroachments. So, for example, let's take residential properties. Under Hawaii law, the de minimis, the allowable so-called encroachment is 6 inches, 0.5 feet. So let's say that it's instead of 6 inches, it's 7 inches. And then they go to a surveyor and say, hey, that's only like this much, right?
Yeah.
Can you, I don't want to make it an issue. Yeah, I mean, is there anything you could do? But is there anything, if requested?
Like I tell my folks, all we do is report measurements. Yeah. So if it's 7 inches, it's 7 inches. So there's nothing really to say, hey, let's push it, because once you do that, then you're not getting your money's worth, right? Like, you want to know exactly that measurement.
Yeah.
So, I mean, other ways, sure. But there again, as we're measuring, the value is what it is. And then hopefully an inch, maybe the two owners can just kind of live with that.
Well, I like that fact that, in your profession, and I'm sure this is how it is in the Hawaii Land Surveyors Association. I mean, people are honest, they have integrity. So, yes, maybe sometimes the homeowners may not like it, the fact that they might be encroaching a little bit into the neighbor's property. But like you said, I mean, it's just the facts. You're just reporting the facts.
I'll give you an example. I was mapping a power pole, and it was 2 feet over the line. And I was kind of struggling with that, like, well, how am I going to present this, or what do I say, or how do I report this? And in the end, all the and I think it was more out of like, oh, I feel bad, like I don't want this to be this way, yeah, but you just got to let the measurements be what they are. And so eventually I was like, you know what, we just report measurements. I'm just gonna let them know it's 2 feet over. And yeah, they were fine with it. Like, they kind of figured. And but I spent a little bit struggling with feeling bad, that they had something over the line.
But the numbers are the numbers, essentially, right? I mean, that's
Right.
yeah, I
Yeah,
get it.
exactly. So you got to be a little bit, detached from feelings, and we don't want bad things to happen to our clients, or friends or family or anything, right? So yeah, in that struggle, you just got to just remind yourself, I just measure. That's all we do, is we measure, and we just say what it is.
It's kind of a science, actually. It sounds like,
It is. It absolutely is. So it's a STEM career. And just to wrap up what we were talking about earlier, yeah, it's one of those careers that not a whole lot of people know about. So yeah, let's get the word out. Let's get more people, especially here in Hawaii. We need more surveyors in Hawaii, and we need them to stay and do the work in their own hometowns.
love that. I love that. So one thing that we get sometimes is, homeowners are trying to decide if a past survey that was done some years ago, is that still valid, or should they get a new one? And buyers will face that, right, when presented with an older survey. What is your perspective on that?
Well, I guess it depends. I mean,
Mhm.
to me, if say it's a subdivision and the owner has not done any sort of improvements, nothing's changed, then yeah, then nothing's changed. Like, and then the other thing is that map done by a reputable surveyor? Does it have a stamp? Right? Like, I've seen sketches, um, no stamp. And it's like, well, I'm not, I can't use this. I don't know who did this, and that's a problem we have here in Hawaii. It's not a requirement to record a lot of the maps, the K1s, K2s, and I really like that we're talking, because I think it would be a great idea for all these maps that are getting done to somehow find their way to the public record, so that it makes our life a lot easier. So we can look at what was done before. And if it's already reported, yeah, I can find it and then report back to you, your clients, that, okay, there's a map. and it looks like, it was done 10 years ago. Doesn't look like anything's changed. Maybe you don't need to get that K1, K2. But until that happens, we can only deal with what is today. Yeah.
Yeah.
So unless you know where that map is, right? File away at, whoever's office, there's no way for us to find that map.
It's so
Yeah.
interesting you bring that up because so it's not public information right now, past surveys. It's not, recorded anywhere. So it's not really accessible. And I think that's a good point because, sometimes we have consumers that will tell us like, "Oh, I saw like the Google map, boundary lines and, I don't know why it's going through the middle of the property like, but I don't think that's what it is." But, they're thinking that might be the actual public record.
Yeah, another public service announcement here. Yes, those property lines that you find in the GIS, whether it's Hawaii County or Maui or Oahu, do not rely on those as the means to decide where your property is. In fact, every one of those counties has a disclaimer that says don't use this for property, right, or real estate. Yeah, I have a friend who works at Maui County, and she says on a weekly basis, we get calls from the public who use our digital maps to put their fence, and then it comes back to, not to be a good idea. And then the county says, well, there's a disclaimer. You're not supposed to be using that. So that's not a good way to use that information. It's good for information. It's good for research. But to use it as a way to put your fence in, no.
Could be a very costly mistake.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I'm looking at just doing a little segment, fencing my place. And it's expensive. Like I don't want to get my fence in the wrong place.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, once in a while, we'll get a call about properties on the Big Island. They're like, oh my God, we could get a 2-acre property, 3-acre property for $30, $40, $50,000. And it's, happens to be
true.
Lava Zone. Yeah, Lava Zone 1 or 2. So and I know you and your team as ThinkTech did a significant amount of work regarding lava flows. And so from just a consumer standpoint, when Kilauea just recently erupted, what happens when the lava flows over your land, covers it? Do you lose it? Do you keep it? What happens when the lava flows into the ocean? Who owns it? Can we talk about that? Because that's a pretty fascinating topic.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And it is something that I'm dealing with now. So your property lines are there, they're fixed. Yeah. So even if you get, 30 foot of lava coming over your property, just imagine your lines are here. Now those lines just bump up 30 feet to the top of the lava. Of course, all your fruit trees and everything else is gone, and you got to start basically over. But you still own that property. And so we see a lot of folks over in vacation land, Hawaii, they want to rebuild. And so one of the things I did was I had to go find original monuments. And luckily, this particular subdivision, the north portion of the subdivision was still intact. So I was able to find enough existing survey monuments of character, of pedigree, in order to put the subdivision back in place. But if everything was gone, oh boy, that would have been a tough one to put back in place. But yes, so the owners still own their property. It just now it's elevated. But anything that was from that shoreline that's kind of new, that belongs to the state. I don't know the reference of the Supreme Court, state or federal, that says that, but I do know, just talking with one of my colleagues at the state, that the state owns that lava flow from where the coast used to be all the way out to the new coast.
So even if you own beachfront or oceanfront property, it's not like, oh my God, all of a sudden I gained an extra 10,000 square feet of land.
Your property is fixed where it was and is, and then the rest of it belongs to the state. Or at least they have governing powers over it.
I remember
interesting to see like what they do with it. Like, I mean, that,
Yeah.
But again, it's all lava. Like I've been out there. You can't go play. It's hard terrain to walk.
I mean, just any consumer, just, homeowners, everyone has different experience and perspective. So this is really good to know. And in terms of, survey results and legal disputes, have you heard of any, issues that you're willing to share?
Like something that wasn't surveyed or something that was missurveyed or
Yeah.
well, I think there's a common thread with that one. Of course, we know about the house that was built on the wrong lot. Unfortunately, at least here in Flint,
Yes.
that's not the first one I've heard of. This particular instance where the house was built in the wrong lot was because the contractor did not get a survey, or at least that's my understanding. And so they, from what I've read, they took the word of the owner. Now, this is orchid land area, yeah. Like it's all ohias and dirt road, and a lot of people depend on the power poles, right? And so I think the owner just went one lot too far or too short. Said, "Yeah, this is it," and the contractor went by that. Yeah. And then of course, built a house in the wrong spot. And then it turned into this legal case where the owner, the contractor, and everybody else was suing everybody. But in the end, and I know as the president of the association, when we saw this, we were pretty much like guaranteed they were trying to save a buck. They didn't want to get a survey. I may be wrong, but that was just my opinion. And then of course, I heard of recently, a non-licensed surveyor kind of doing the same thing. Got the wrong lot marked. Contractor went in, built a house, in the wrong spot. But in this case, they went after the pin finder and made them pay for the mistake. So, but still, there's no guarantee, right? No map, no stamped, no nothing. Somebody eventually's got to pay.
Do you hear of that happening? I mean, where there's people that decide not to do a survey and they just construct like that example, or is that something that's common, or is that just happens once in a while?
I think that's where we get into some gray areas with the state laws. Again, there's no requirement for anyone to produce a map, or produce a map when the monument is set. So even if somebody didn't do a survey, it's kind of hard to know if they did or did not. You know what I'm saying? I don't know why somebody, especially if they're making an investment, why you wouldn't just pay to have it surveyed so you have that guarantee and you have that map. People are just trying to save a buck, and I totally understand that. I totally get that. It's just, if you're going to spend a lot of money on an investment, you probably want to spend a little bit, a fraction of the total cost on making sure that everything's right, and your property corners all marked.
Earlier too about making some sort of rule or legislation or whatever it would take to make it so that surveys are, part of the recorded records so that they're either
Mhm.
publicly accessible or they're just on file, right? I mean, that makes sense. So I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, and then we can make those, add a little bit to that. But as far as like adding language like, hey, a licensed surveyor has to stamp it, right? Again, going back to that stamp. And then just another note, you can ask to see a surveyor's license. And also you can go into the ISLA, the Board of Engineers and Land Surveyors, to look someone up. But I think first and foremost, when you're making a deal with a surveyor, everything that they have should have their stamp, should have their license marked everywhere, right? On their web page, on their proposals. So then you don't have to go asking for it because it's like everywhere. I mean, you should be proud, like, to have your stamp everywhere, right? Like there was a lot that went into getting that, just like I'm sure there went a lot to get your real estate license, right? I'll put my number on everything.
No, this has been just educational. Just, I learned so much from you, Victor. So we really very much appreciate your time.
Thanks. And thanks for having me. And yeah, hopefully we get to do it again.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
We'd love to have you back. Everyone, Victor Rasgado, president of the Hawaii Land Surveyors Association. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again soon. Mahalo.
Aloha.
Aloha.